well. I mean, how about any updates on the projects? I guess that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, I can give an update on kind of the construction that's going on. Got a lot going on this summer. The last kind of phases of the middle school project, so they pretty much have the last few areas now completely demoed out, and they're working on getting the new systems in. I think everything's looking good on that project as far as schedule goes. Started 2 projects across the parking lot at Pinecrest. So there's the deferred maintenance, replacing a bunch of plumbing fixtures, kitchen hood. Just had a meeting out there yesterday. I think they're doing really good on schedule too. I think the hood is usually one of the things we're concerned about, and I think they're getting it next week. So that project's not a large project, but going well so far. Then the roof, I think about a third of the roof we're replacing. Actually really far along on that. I don't know, have an update on percent complete exactly, but I think they're almost done. We walked around there yesterday, weren't seeing any issues with the roof. Sometimes when they're still working on it and you get a storm come through, they find some spots they weren't quite done with, but Pinecrest looked good. Tilden is kind of the last project that's like fully in progress. We did walk the roof. I think they're really far along on that. But there were some spots that they're trying to track down some leaks. I think one in the custodian office and one in the gymnasium, cafeteria, large room there, the rec room.
In the northwest corner there, right? Where the food preparation area is there. It's on that side, right?
Yeah.
So I was just over there this morning. So yeah, I see that they were doing tin work and whatever else over there.
Yeah, I think they were still trying to figure out what was going on with that one when I had to run to the next meeting there, but I think they figured out the one in the custodial office.
Okay.
And then I guess on Wednesday we talked a little bit about the high school early childhood improvements that they sent me some more of their documents, their bonds and stuff like that yesterday, but I don't think they've gotten their signed contract yet, and they haven't gotten started yet. So
okay. So from Wednesday's discussion, we were going to not put in what's the sink called, the big sink, but we were going to do the rest, right?
The wash basin, yeah. So we'll, like Scott said, we'll proceed with issuing a PR to remove all that scope, get the pricing, make sure they're crediting back everything they should be. So I've already let them know that you guys aren't planning to do that work. We're just working on the paperwork then. So.
Great, thanks. And you had mentioned the middle school, and we're kind of in the last phases. Have we heard from the admin team there as far as if there is a particular bathroom? I know that's kind of been on our docket to see if they had a particular bathroom as far as setting up as a privacy bathroom, or if they had any more thoughts on that.
Yeah, so they did review it, and there's a set of boys and girls toilet just on the west side of the cafeteria, and it's kind of in the southeast corner of the main classroom wing. That they just thought that was the most centrally located, would see the most benefit for use. So we did put together an estimate of what we thought that would take. Our project estimate is $158,000. And
that's for the pair?
Yeah. So that's, I guess, just as a reminder, that's creating full privacy stalls, full floor to ceiling walls with tile in between the stalls instead of the partitions that are there now. And one of them's a pretty funky layout, so you end up losing, we've been excluding urinals in what was the boys' bathroom, so there's just the whole thing is water closets with full privacy stalls.
Okay.
Just so that we can put that on our list of projects to consider with kind of the cost estimate. I think that's
Yeah, and I can, I probably should have had this for the meeting, but I can send these costs we worked on. I can send that in just a summary, definitely to Jen and Cam so it can get updated on the list, but I'll include all you as well.
Okay.
okay, great. Does anyone have any questions about that?
No.
Okay, otherwise another thing is still talking about that high school wall and
Oh, yeah.
what we want to do with that, which direction we want to go, if we have any more insight into what may be the long-term best solution here.
Kyle, I'm not sure, do we have any, I don't know that we have anything new since our last conversation. Is that fair?
Yeah, I guess I thought last month we had talked about capping the cost, recognizing there's additional costs, but kind of staying under $50,000. I think, we still probably need to, I think we figured it was probably too late to get somebody out there this year. I'll have to check with Nick. But yeah, I think we need to, ahead of next year, we'll just need to work with Cam to make sure he's comfortable with the long-term viability of what we're doing. And then just, I think all the options we talked about, there were some amount of, checking in or maintenance or, resealing. So just making sure that everybody's aware of any periodic attention that has to be paid to the wall.
Right. Yeah, no, we did mention capping it at 50,000. So I just wasn't sure if, because I know some of the proposals were already over that 50. And so if within that 50,000, if we kind of had a best guess on which direction to kind of go with that. But if it's not going to get done this year, then we can wait on trying to figure that out. It's no longer as pressing, so.
Bob, did we get anything from Wednesday night? Remember we were talking about when dollars, or maybe Scott knows too, when dollars from bond, we had to use that money by, I think Kelsey said something about a year out from now, and I don't know if Jen didn't get a chance to touch base on Wednesday.
Yep, she's on right now and just popped on.
Yep.
Hi there. So Kyle and I have talked about it, and I can find in Kim's documents, it looks like a 3-year. So that would be at the end of this next fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
We are going to try to confirm that just to be sure, because I'm not finding it like in the official documents. It's just like on her spreadsheets. So I think it's the 3 years, but we're going to double check and make sure.
Yeah, and we could probably easily extend it to the 5. That'd be something to talk to Springstead about. I've done that before.
Okay.
Usually just requires a letter from the architect, but and it's kind of, part of it was based on investors need to know. Part of it is MDE likes to know. But my experience is there's no police at MDE that comes after you.
Okay.
It's more of a practices thing. And I've had a few clients, in an effort to be very fiscally conservative, sit on this stuff for a long time. And I think that's not wise, because you probably at some point will be could get in a place where you need to return it to the taxpayers.
Mhm.
So the spirit of it is you ask them for money for these projects, you do these projects, you get them done, and you close the books and spend the money. And you do have latitude to spend it on things beyond the list that the voters approved. So we made sure you had that latitude. So as long as you can as long as you know the funds left will satisfy the things you promised to the voters, there's some latitude to start doing some of these new items. And I think that's what we've been talking about. And we should just check with Springstead. They will have that 3-year confirmed for sure.
I'll reach out to Kelly.
And I bet Kelly's been in a situation where we've done 5 as well. So if that's of the mindset of the board to, you know, have a little more time, not do gun to your head kind of thing. I mean, this is a phased deployment, right, of projects, and therefore you still haven't finished the list that you promised the voters. And I think that in itself might be a great talking point if we need to convince anyone at MDE or anywhere along the chain to give you some flexibility.
Well, and the one thing we may want to look at in that light is, depending upon how many dollars are left or we anticipate being left, as we move through the next 2-3 weeks here with principals in planning for what needs to be done with regard to our response to COVID and being back, there quite possibly could be some facility things that need to be addressed in some of our buildings with regard to safety, social distancing, that might qualify for bond dollars inside of that scope. Don't know what those would be, but that might be something worth discussing as if, you know, if the board would be interested in that.
Yeah. The bond dollars really have other than satisfying the list that was presented to the voters, once that is done, there's no strings really. It's really falls under much like capital dollars. It can be applied to any kind of capital improvement. So.
And I can give you an example of what would make me bring up that idea is if we get into a spot where, you know, right now we're looking at trying to facilitate a process at the elementary level where we can have at least 80% of our 85% of our elementary kids back in a building in a day. We may have to utilize some gym space differently than what we normally use it, which would require us to potentially put up temporary walls, things like that, things that would qualify for a facilities expense. I'm not saying we are doing that. I'm just saying that's where we are in the planning process. And this might be a way to make good use of those dollars we don't have allocated for something and not have to take it out of our fund balance or out of capital dollars that are set aside for something else.
Sure.
So on that discussion, I know that I've seen a lot of things posted online about making sure that the air systems, you know, are adequate for, you know, having a lot of people in the buildings. I mean, would our air systems meet that requirement? Do we have what's necessary there, or would we also need to be looking at making modifications to that?
That'd be a good spot for Cam to jump in. I think I remember him giving a little bit of a talk about that earlier. He's there. I see he's there, but I see he's on mute. There he is.
I'm using my phone right now. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Do you know specifically what we're talking about, Kelsey, about air systems? Are you talking about, you know, the amount of fresh air, or what level of filters we use?
Yeah, so Cam, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, whether or not schools and educational buildings in their current HVAC system is set up to handle capacity of people back in the building, and specifically the filtration systems that can mitigate some of the aerosol, which is the biggest concern, right, of contracting this.
So,
Yeah,
Dave.
Go ahead, Cam. I was just going to ask a question, but go ahead.
So as far as our HVAC system goes district-wide, we have some very different systems. In our elementaries, we have, besides McCullough, we have ventilators, so it's a local HVAC system, looks kind of like a furnace in your home, and they have their own filters there. It's about 30% fresh air coming in. Some of our new units at the middle school have 100% outside air coming in and 100% inside air going out. They have a heat wheel that, or direct exchange heat exchangers for the air. So all of the air in the spaces is actually leaving the building, and it's all fresh air coming in. Not all of the units are that way. And then we have some units at our high school are all mixed air, so it has outside air and return air going through it. But all of our systems have a pre-filter, and which is a 2-inch pleated filter, and then a 4-inch pleated filter.
Oh, we
I think
lost
we
him.
just lost him. I guess the question I was going to ask, and if there he comes back on, but is what I've seen and read, they were talking about, with numbers of bodies in a structure, how often the air had to be exchanged to have fresh air. Kelsey, is that what you had read so far too?
Yeah, that was around the discussion. Yep. So yeah, getting that air circulation and how often and how frequently we're getting rid of the air.
I know that's what some of the information that I had read there from the health department had talked about, air exchange and the number of times in an hour air was exchanged. There he is again, Cam.
Yeah, and maybe
So the
that's
guy at the
something
best
we have
service
to look
here.
into. But and we lost him again.
I think
I can jump in just to kind of, I think, finish where he was going. The kind of the two key things are filtration and ventilation. So, not mixing back in building return air as much, just to make the environment higher air quality, closer to outside. So, that's something where maybe Cam and I can just do a survey of everything. I mean, I think we have a good handle on the systems in every building, but what strategies could be put in place between now and children being back in the buildings to, for you as a board to feel comfortable that the environment you're providing is as safe as feasible, because there are some limitations. You can't just stack in more filters. You start, restricting what the fan can do, and now you're moving less air, heating, cooling less. So none of that's good. But a more strategic approach at like adding as much filtration as we can. So that's something we could look at for sure. Ventilation's another one. Like Cam said, there's a lot of systems at the middle school and at McCullough. I think basically the whole building at McCullough, all the air delivered to the space is 100% outside air. And they're actually one of the more effective systems at maintaining air quality in classrooms. But there's other systems like the gymnasiums that we could, especially in the fall when it's a little easier, we could look at a control strategy to increase ventilation until something like the heating or potentially the cooling isn't able to keep up. So I think there's going to be limitations to like bringing in 100% outside air on old systems when it's freezing outside. But up to that point, I think there's a lot we can do to demonstrate improved air quality in the classrooms or in the whole buildings. So
Kyle, is it fair to say in general, they have lots of, there aren't too many, there aren't spaces in the district where we don't have a lot of capability. I mean, most systems have been updated recently, and we're at least meeting current standards. And in some cases, we can do a lot to and go beyond that. Is that a fair way of characterizing it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the systems probably with the lowest or with the most limitation are the unit ventilators at Pinecrest. Cam, they're probably about the oldest. And at Kennedy, right? They're probably the same.
Kennedy both.
Yeah.
Or the rooftops at Tilden. Those are kind of a different animal, but
So that probably makes sense then what you said, Kyle. Maybe the way to go about this is to have you and Kyle just double check every building in terms of surveying what's there. And like Scott said, if there's anything we can do that will ensure that we're continue to be at standard level, if not exceed standard level, that we work to get at least those options in front of this committee. So we could make a decision about whether we can put those in prior to fall or not. So then the last thing we need is people worrying about the air quality in our buildings when they're getting ready to send their kids back to school.
Yep.
Yeah, and if people even know that we've had this discussion and we've looked into it, we've done a survey, we can answer those questions for them. I think that helps a lot with that anxiety there.
And I can't imagine it would take very long, would it, to go through the quick list of the buildings? Because it sounds like there's really only 2 that might be questionable at all.
I wish our records were well organized. That's something that I'm still working on. So it will take a little bit of time to go through and check that. I can spot check. I know where there's information at each unit. When they were balanced, the balance sheet is still in there. So that'll tell me how much fresh air is in there. But I don't really have a way of calculating the amount of time it takes to exchange the full amount of air in the room.
you know, I think the challenge around these discussions is sometimes people want communication along the lines of how much more safe is my school than my home, or is my school than the store. There's really no way for any of us to say we did X, Y, and Z in the schools and they are 4 times safer than going to Target. It's just, but I think, so I guess what I'm saying is it's hard to maybe get down to specifics as far of how much percent we are above code or above something along those lines, but to just look at each system and determine what are our limits of what is the most we can do as far as adding some more filtration and increasing ventilation to make the air quality as best as we can.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
But Cam, we can maybe set something up. I'll pull some information together, just like a summary on all the buildings that we can work through, and maybe we can touch base next week on that.
All right.
Cam, do you want to give a little update on the sewer issue we talked about yesterday at Tilden?
So yeah, kind of an ongoing problem we've had at Tilden is we've had a bad smell that has come up, and so Carrie will notify us and we go over with the floor gas and we test for some harmful gases in the building. We haven't found anything, but it's a noticeable smell, and there are people who have reported symptoms to that. We think we know what it might be. There's a restroom that we think that there's a collapsed waste line in. So part of the project is running a camera down that waste pipe once they've cut the floor out verify that if the pipe is good or if it's broken. And then it would probably be an added cost to replace that pipe. But I spoke with Carrie and told her to just fill out an indoor air quality report so we get something started, so we have it recorded. And then if she has people who have symptoms or are uncomfortable being in the building, she sends them home or they work from home. But until then, we test for harmful gases as it comes up and work through it as much as we can.
Cam, now we've had that bathroom issue on our list for, I don't have the list right in front of me, but it's on the list to get work done, right? And we set a dollar value.
Yep, it's on the list. They've got it torn apart right now. That's part of the project that's going on at Tilden right now with the roof. So
Okay.
the men's bathroom in the senior center, and then the smaller men's bathroom on the northwest side, those urinals are getting replaced, and they're checking the pipe in that south bathroom.
Yeah, that's in the original part of the building, so I wouldn't be surprised if we might have more issues there besides it's collapsed right in the building or right in the men's bathroom.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Suspect it's like downstream, like between there and where the pipe leaves the building. It's just without getting a scope and a scanner in the pipe to really pinpoint that, it's hard to tell them where to dig up the floor and patch a pipe back in place. So Cam, I was out there yesterday. I apologize. I forgot to ask them when they were gonna have that done. So I'll follow up right now with them.
I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that board members, you were aware that we're working on it and what they think the issue is. And because you might hear about it because it is one of those smelly things. While not harmful, it stinks.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any other things we need to discuss today?
Do you guys
Lisa, you've been very quiet today.
I feel like my connection is very tenuous. No, I don't have, those were all good updates and it's good information. I think the next big thing in front of us, and we touched on it a little bit today, is what's next on the list.
Mhm.
I think we need to dedicate some time to that conversation, and this might be leading in towards where it starts to get easier to be in person and have, a whiteboard and do some prioritization. And certainly these COVID related facility upgrades need to be considered, And again, that might not be for today, but that's probably a near term all meeting kind of topic.
Yeah, it will be as we move closer to defining what it's going to look like, I think, particularly at the elementary buildings.
Sure. And then I know, I think it would be good. I think between Wold and Jen to go back to the original bond language, double check that we, what have we got left that has to be high priority? And then where do COVID improvements fit against things like storage buildings at the middle school and track upgrades and middle school bathrooms? I mean, eventually probably as August and September, we're going to have to decide what to recommend next.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly do think it'd be good to be reassured that everything on our bond list has been covered. I'd hate to slip up on that.
Yeah, and I would like to kind of see what our plan for the fall is turning out to look like, to see if we do need to make some investments there to make sure, it's safe if we're going to be bringing the kids back to school and how we get that set up. Okay.
You're going to send over something about the bathrooms at the middle school, right?
Yeah, I'll send over that project cost that we budgeted for the list.
Okay.
And we did get, last time when we talked about the locker room options, I think there was consensus at the high school that there's going to be a additional privacy project in the locker rooms.
Yep.
So we budgeted a layout that would remove, we had to remove some of the lockers to make it work, but to keep the same amount of showers. And then we budgeted one with actually adding 2 showers. So I think if we kept the shower count the same in each locker room, you'd lose about 30 lockers in each locker room.
Yeah.
And
I think that was not a problem, right? The way the discussion went, that the lockers weren't being used as thoroughly, and so we wouldn't have a problem with removing some of them.
Yeah, that seemed to be what Mike said he would prefer.
Yep.
so maybe I just need, I mean, he said he even preferred if they could get more showers. So maybe I just need to check that shower count, or sorry, the locker count that we end up with is appropriate, and then get that project cost updated on the sheet.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that would be great.
From a scale perspective, how big is the difference in cost between the +2 and the same?
So the project cost for keeping the count the same is $487,000 total, both locker rooms, and we are adding the privacy at the toilets too. I guess just wanted to remind everybody of that. So it's an extra $60,000 to, did I do that right? Yeah, $60,000 to the project cost to add 2 more showers in each. So it's not cheap, but I mean, you know, a lot of that cost is demo that you're already in there, lights and exhaust that, you know, it's about the same whether you're doing, you know, 6 or 8 showers in each one.
Yeah, certainly on the face of it, that that cost difference does not seem large. So if Mike feels like he can live with the locker count, I mean, I feel like that could go back to the high school.
Okay.
And hear their preference.
Do we have any update on the putting the fence back over at Todd Field before the snow flies?
We just got approval to put the fence back, and the fence company can do it right away, so it's probably gonna go up next week.
Good.
Just if you want a general update,
Sure, go ahead.
bleachers will take some time. The parts are from the factory, they're 60 days out. We still need approval on those. I have the quotes back, but I haven't had a chance to send them off to insurance. And then the field turf, we're still waiting for pricing. They have installers in Minnesota working until mid-September or so. So they want to get mid-August. So they want to get them over here to install it in that time, but I haven't gotten any paperwork or pricing.
Do we have any problem with trying to secure new turf? I mean, is there a lead time there that we're going to have to be looking at?
There's a long lead time. I'm working with a representative from Field Turf who's talking to the factory, and they have the order in place for the turf because they know what they'll need. But this is their busy season. They're making fields for all over the country and worldwide, and they ship all their own stuff. So if they don't have a truck coming up, then we would suck up the cost of shipping and all that. They have a truck coming up the 15th and the 27th or 29th. So the representative I was talking to is trying to get our order in on those trucks that are already coming up to Minnesota.
Good, because we need to get that, you know, we get a point that can have at least some activities on that field if we can't use that side of the bleachers and whatever, but we need the field so that we can put kids out there and get some involvement going.
So
Yeah.
now one of my questions with that is we got really lucky that there was no one in the field practicing, that there was no one in the bleachers. As far as long-term safety for the field, what are we talking about for plans there?
Scott?
I actually,
Is that me?
Yes?
Well, I haven't been in any conversations, full disclosure, right? We certainly talked about this kind of thing long ago. Year over year, right? We've talked about what if a car accident or something
Yep.
spilled over the
Yep.
edge. And you've had some near misses and such, and this is a little more sinister feeling, where someone appears to have intent to stop something like what happened. It's probably even debatable whether bollards would, but I think bollards would be the natural response, or guardrail. The challenge is all of that is MnDOT right away. And so,
So yeah,
as we know well, you don't build anything in their right of way. They build what they want to build in their right of way. So if there is a desire by the district to basically harden the perimeter somehow, right? It's I would guess it starts with a request to MnDOT. And as we know also really well, the wheels of MnDOT turn pretty slowly. You have some legislative connectivity that
right.
help move things up. But if,
I
these
guess-
kinds of threats are difficult, right?
Yep.
They do.
I guess my concern is, yeah, I heard what Molly Klein said about where the right of way is, and, we're really infringing on all of that right now on the south side. And it's like, okay, the state's going to be just like, yep, it's your problem, but we won't let you fix it on our right of way. So I guess we have to come up with some creative ideas. I'm like Kelsey, I'm more than a little worried about, we've had these incidences that have happened where, yep, somebody's piled into the fence and maybe not damaged it not so much, or hit the corner, and luckily the vehicle didn't go down on the field. But this one really opens the eyeballs, and there's a lot of concern in the community about this.
Well, I think your speculation on how MnDOT might treat you is pretty accurate. I mean, we're all speculating, right? But we've been through, 3 years of them now on specific things, and you've lived with this relationship for as long as anyone can remember. So I agree, they're going to say, we're kind of allowing you to be here. If you're going to make it tough for us to allow you to be here, why don't you just, play your game somewhere else? So I think they're going to be reluctant to do non-highway type improvements. Well, they're going to do any improvement that they have to pay for.
Right.
And we found they're even reluctant to have you pay for improvements. So then I started thinking, what's within your control? And one of the things that comes to mind is you could say, we're not going to use those bleachers and have everyone be on the home side. There are a number of stadiums that do that. It comes with it lots of operational challenges, because now you got the visitors sitting shoulder to shoulder with the home crowd. And the stadiums that do that usually create a section or something of a buffer, but it affects overall capacity. And so, yeah, you could take that on we could study if there's more capacity to be able to be constructed on the home side. That would go a long way, because really, I think the high perimeter is the south and the east side.
Yep.
And you could choose to move your activities away from those two sides and probably get by and be a lot safer.
Well, I guess it's something we better start looking at a little harder, but
I mean,
it started with the idea of where we're getting the fence and how soon before that is secured. But, I think we as a group need to kind of think maybe a little more proactively and try and come up with some options for the south. I hate the idea of removing the fans' experience from the south side as visitors come in and they want to congregate and they're in a certain area. I think that's fine, especially when we go to some other stadium. It's nice to be in your own group of folks, but there's got to be, and I don't know. I just think that even if we have to alter the way the design is on, and this is talking right off the top, alter the design on the south side of the field to bring us back into our right of way, that could give us some options of putting up something secure behind a new design of bleachers along in there. And then there's a space in between the right of way up till where the state comes into play. I don't know.
I don't think that's, we'll pull out the drawings, Dave, and take a look, but I don't think there's enough room. I think that right of way, I think
It's pretty,
I think the bleachers are in the right of way.
yep, they are from
Where that
the press box over, because when you get to the corner of the shed, you got this much room off the corner of the shed.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a way to say we're gonna move our whole operation off the right of way.
Okay, well,
So
just,
it feels to me like there's two paths that we should be investigating, and one of them we might have to investigate anyway. So if we're 60 days out on bleacher parts, we're gonna have to think about operation for this year. And we in this sentence is Trent and Cam.
Yep.
And maybe some portion of the bleachers from the press box south or press box west will have to be inaccessible. And then is there a multi-year opportunity there to change that operation? And then on a second hand is, we're just going to be in this long-term relationship with MnDOT, and someday, maybe in the next 5 years, they're going to redo that corner.
that's right.
Right? I mean, heaven only knows given their current budget state, but we need to be in that conversation, and maybe there's a way that we can engage with them and get some physical barrier built.
Right.
But it may mean that at a minimum, we abandon bleachers west of the press box forever. Because I think the other side does have a different level of protection, and it doesn't line up with a street.
That's right. That's right.
But at a minimum, we're going to have to change operation this year, because it doesn't sound like we're going to have bleachers in there by September anyway.
So maybe, Cam, if you and I and Trent can go down and kind of just have a 15-minute look and come up with maybe some options after we get the information from Scott of exactly where that right of way does end, because that would be helpful to just review, at least for me personally, knowing where does that right of way start encroaching on the field itself.
Right. It's pretty dramatic. It's on, I know that it's the field, portions of the field are in the right of way.
That's correct.
And certainly on the east end, a big chunk of that east end, maybe even in the end zone, is on the right, in the right. It's pretty aggressive because that's a major intersection. So we'll get that for you. You'll see that where the limitations are. I agree with Lisa, getting your voice in the conversation, letting MnDOT know that just putting things back together is not necessarily your preference. That might be the interim step, but the long-term step is up guardrail. I don't know, if there's a vehicle catch fencing that they use, the racetrack use, and I don't know how far you take it, but it's going to be through the MnDOT lens always. And so you have a good relationship with them. a good communication relationship with them. I think they've been really good this last couple of years.
Yep.
So maybe it's even a letter from the district, you know, on district letterhead that says, you know, we had this incident. It opened our eyes to, you know, additional vulnerabilities at our site. We both know we're not likely to move off this site anytime soon. So we want to continue to make it safer each year. And
Well, one of the things I just got reminded about 4 days ago, we just had a high-speed chase that started over on 9th Street and ended out in the county. They went right by our house at about 60 miles an hour. So, you know, in-town chases at this kind of speed is dramatic, and you know, started just a few blocks away from Todd Field, and it's like if they'd been going the other direction and there'd been an accident, we'd had more damage, I think, to the field.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not, you know, we don't live in a quiet, peaceful area. It's getting more activity.
Yeah. But I think that we certainly have some information that we can look at with you and then talk about MnDOT, because I think reaching out to them just in an official capacity so that you've said, hey, we want to be part of future
discussion.
discussions, and can we accelerate it? You know, all those requests that are natural here. Can we accelerate things? Can we contribute? Because you
Right.
know, they spread their dollars across the whole state, and they're
Yep.
very stingy. We saw that with the sidewalk repair.
Oh, yeah.
Who's
So-
been the
Well,
lead
I'm on board
contact?
with what Lisa said, that we abandoned the west side there for this year and just, you know, secure that off, but get some kind of fencing and maybe even think about some concrete temporary barriers if the state will let us put them up there.
Well, again, I want to be careful. Thank you, Dave. But I want to be careful about the board in a governance role versus the board in a management role. So
Okay.
I would like to kind of piggyback on what Bob said, which is, you know, let's get our administrative leadership team out there to look at it, look at alternatives, know where the lines are, make a recommendation of how we operate this year. It's certainly fair to send a letter to MnDOT and say, wow, this really opened our eyes. We've sort of known about this, but
Yep.
this really opened our eyes. Let's keep talking about permanent solutions. And I don't want us to sit around right now and identify the solution. I want us to say, you know, you guys administrators identify it, but we are very, you know, obviously very aware now of this vulnerability. So I like Bob's idea of getting out there with an administrative team, and I think it's fair following up on that, just to send a letter of concern to MnDOT and just stay in communication.
Who's been the main contact with MnDOT over the last couple of years, and who has that contact information?
Primarily, I think it was Tim.
Yeah. It's
And I
superintendent.
have copies of a lot of his letters.
Yep.
But it's
Okay.
really with Molly Klein.
Yep.
I
right?
was going to say, yeah, she's the knowledgeable engineer for the area here assigned.
She's got good
Nice.
relationships, Bob, with all the administrative level at the city, county,
Yep.
and she would seek to connect with you, even though we all talk with her.
Okay.
She's in a communications role to connect in this region, and she's been really good.
And she's
We
from
had,
MnDOT?
we had to go through quite a bit to get the latest improvements to happen,
Okay.
including you had to buy some land from them
Perfect.
to do the entrance building, because the right of way is basically from the entrance building all the way west is all the parking lot is on their land.
Okay. All right.
All right, so it sounds like this will be kind of a priority to talk about at our next facilities meeting, along with taking a look at that list and coming up with our plans for our priorities. Given at that point, we should have guidance from MDE for school reopenings, and we should kind of have our plan more or less set up to know if we need to put any money into COVID preparations. Does that sound about right?
There's one more thing I'd like to ask, and maybe I don't have it in my notes. What did we decide when Mike was talking about the upper entrance, securing the upper entrance at the high school? Lisa, you remember? What
My
gonna
recollection is that we're not going to secure it. It's just going to be closed during the day. It's not going to be staffed. It's not going to, and then it'll be closed during the day. We'll have one entrance to the high school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure we were talking about.
Yep.
And I really feel good about the fact that we had that conversation with Mike in the room. I think that was the right way to do it.
Yep.
Yep, and he seemed ready to go. He understood that that was his guidance, and he was ready to make that work with the one entrance during the day. So.
Yep, and we talked about that with him yesterday, just to kind of get an idea operationally what that's going to flow like from time period to time period throughout the day, and for staff to use it as an access point if they need to, because the other thing we don't want to do is have it be a situation where it crowds up the student parking lot. Yep. So,
right.
Yeah, but I would agree. Mike's on top of it, and that seems to have a pretty good handle on operationally what we're going to do there.
Other than that, I don't have.
You guys already talk about the change order for July, Todd Field?
Nope.
Nope. So it's a really small one. Well, not really small, but 1,006. It'll go on the agenda for July 22nd. Cam, do you want to explain it?
Long story short, there was a certain kind of gate that they had put in, and just with it's painted black, so it moves a little bit. So there was a latch that wasn't latching, and it's a gate that we use to go in and out with vehicles, and then we open it also for it's not the main gate, just to the south of that. We also use it for pedestrian traffic. That gate wouldn't latch because it wouldn't quite line up because they both move. So that was to change to grind down and change the latching mechanism, and then to add a cane bolt to the bottom to keep one stationary in order to get that open and closed. The reason it matters is because it has a key fob instead of a padlock on it. So if you scan your fob 8 feet to the right and then walk back over, you don't have time to get it lined up in order to get it latched shut. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do we need to talk? I was going to say, do we need to talk about when we want to meet again in August?
Well, I think if we meet in August, I would like to meet in August. And what I was going to say is I would hope prior to that maybe we could get the most up-to-date list.
Okay.
And what I still see on what I need to know or be reminded of is remaining bond items that remain, and then what we think of as the priorities that we've moved forward, and then what's our next group, the set of the next group, so that we can really dig into that. We'll have good estimates. We'll probably have feedback from Mike on the locker rooms at the high school. We'll be able to see ballpark what remains for dollars. And I would expect to see any necessary COVID modifications on that list, as well as the things we've had in the past, which is around some equipment, some storage, some high school track or high school baseball field, middle school track. I'd expect to see those things. So I would really like to get that just the day before.
Okay. Are we like the first week in August, or I'm kind of looking at calendar right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since we're talking about COVID modifications, I want to make sure that they have time to come up with the modifications, but I also feel like we need to get that information sooner rather than later so we can make those plans.
Yeah, and I honestly can't give you a timeline on exactly what that's going to be. Right now, we're on a schedule to hopefully be able to give a pretty decent update of what we will most likely go, what it'll look like most likely on the 22nd at that board meeting. you know, and as I explained to the admin team today, we're kind of at the spot where if, and in sports terms, we are trying to figure out whether we're going with zone defense or man-to-man coverage right now. And by the 22nd, we're hoping to be at that spot where we've assigned the players to the team, and which plays are we going to run first is kind of the sequence. And that's where I hope to be with us by the 22nd. And that will dictate then that next layer of conversation about, are there facility things that need to be addressed? I don't anticipate it being anything astronomically huge. I think it's going to be things more like, depending upon how many kids we have in a building, what's the flow, you know, what are things like flow in, the flow out, control points, additional needs in terms of furniture if we have to move into different areas or new spaces, potential temporary walls, things of that nature. That'll be kind of, I would say probably fall in the line of more of an FF&E type thing than a true permanent fixture type facilities thing. So I anticipate the only holdup will be like with the fencing and the bleachers, any lead time we would have to have, because we're not going to be the only district in the same position, and we're about at the same spot that other districts are right now. So I imagine just like masks, we're all going to be placing orders right about the same time. And so it's that supply and demand with everything else right now. So it isn't going to be something that it's going to take, I don't think, engineering or design teams or things like that to happen, unless we run into something with regard to an HVAC issue or a lighting issue or a emergency system type issue as a secondary thing. But other than that, I think it'll be pretty simple.
Bob and Cam, are there going to be any real needs to, you know, secure additional sanitizing items or, you know, masks? Are we going down that route that we need to start thinking about way out, that we, you know, can we secure these things in time to even open up the buildings?
We're on it. That was I think the first meeting, the first conversation I had with Cam right after, hello, I'm Bob, was where are we at with ordering our PP&E for this stuff. So Jen and Cam are all over, and Deanna are all over ordering with hand sanitizer. We've got we have enough face masks right now for 2 for every staff member. Jen's putting in more orders for actually some Raiderized face masks that would be for staff and for potentially kids.
Okay, are these reusable ones?
They're all cloth reusable masks. Yep. And
how are we setting up to sanitize and wash?
Yep. And so Cam's all over that. That's part of, as we get into our systems planning here, we've got everybody kind of divided up into different groups. And so Cam's working with, and we'll be working with the building principals kind of along this next tier of, in each building, if it comes to the food stations, what's that look like? And as an example, what will change is right now, you know, elementary kids may not go to a cafeteria to eat. Food might take place for the sanitary reason. They may be eating in their classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to change how we roll out sanitizing of stations. We're looking at putting together packs for every teacher. So every teacher will have a COVID pack that will include items like, you know, gloves and their mask and appropriate cleaning supplies, and every teacher will have their own set of that. So we don't end up in that typical, ooh, I need this, so I steal it from this room, and I need this, so I steal it from this room. So we're, I guess to answer your question, Dave, we're on there. We're
okay.
Working through those right
I didn't know if that discussion had gone that far yet. I know our oldest daughter who teaches in South Wash, they're already talking about burp bags because they think kids are going to be either having an issue, claustrophobic, whatever, concerned, and then there'll be the issue of you'll need a burp bag. So
Yep, we're gonna have to go through stuff like that. We'll have to go through like mask sharing. I mean, there's gonna be a whole learning process with kids as we move through this. I would agree.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the Raiders masks. Just yesterday, I had another person reach out to me. I know I had sent you the one email. about potentially donating cloth masks and
Mhm.
making them with fun character fabrics to make kids more willing to wear them.
Mhm.
And so there are a number of community members who, if we would like that or determine that's safe, that we can be using, you know, asking them to make donations. So
And I think that's going to be important, particularly as we figure out what exactly we're going to do with students and masks. We haven't, I would say superintendents across the state really haven't come to a decision on that one yet. But that may be a place where we could really use some donations from the community, is masks for kids, because unlike adults, you can imagine, like anything else, kids are going to be losing them. They're going to be misplacing them. I mean, they're going to go through more than 2 masks as they cruise through the day.
really?
Yeah, yeah. We might have to come over to your house, Kelsey, and grab some from you.
It's a challenge, I know that.
Yeah. Well, we're in full steam preparation. I can tell you that. Trying to
Okay.
just get it all, take care of as much as we can, as soon as we can.
Yep, I don't have anything else except maybe, you know, Jen, keep on top of where the funds are at and what our situation is. And otherwise, I'm looking at an August date, and then I got to run because it's after
Okay.
11 already.
Yep. Okay. Well, that sounds good.
All right.
All right.
All right. I hope everyone has a good day.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
All right.